How does this work again? Wait, is that the sound of crickets? Crickets indicating that I've been gone for a little bit? Well, guess what? Sometimes things happen. How's it going, everyone? Cuppa Anime Joe here, ready to review another chapter of One Piece. The current one is 1177, and it is titled Fury. And to open up, we have a cover request with Robin. Always nice to see Robin. She's quite a cutie. Planting flowers in a flower bed that was dug up by small mole people. I don't know if there's anything we can really glean out of this, but it's cute. It's fun to look at. We got a few different ones here. We got this dude with the headphones on the right. He's smoking a cigarette, chilling out. And then in the back here on the left, we have a dude with a hammer hitting a stump. I'm not really sure what he is doing. Maybe that's how they're making the holes, right? They pound the stumps into the ground. It makes the hole. Robin comes in and plants the flowers. Anyway, fun stuff. But we're not here for the cover art request, are we? No. We are here for the chapter itself. And so getting into the first page, we have the kids being absolutely enamored. Stars in their eyes, mouths hitting the floor, tons of excitement. What are they excited for, you might ask? Well, it is the sheer aura and coolness being exuded by the giant warrior pirates in pitched combat. And what this is really gonna instill in the kids, I think, is something that Jarl has mentioned in the past to Harald, and even Ida mentioned to Harald. Like, you know, it's important to have peace when you can. I think education is really important as well. Like, it's excellent to be able to expand what your culture is doing. However, even Harold was probably too far in one direction in that he wanted to remove violence and fighting completely. And as Ida put it, she actually thought the, warrior's pride was actually kind of cool. And that is what I think is coming through to the kids here. And like the Elbaf arc is actually kind of showing us the importance of that balance, right? Because in order to be able to have your schools and have your education and have your peaceful nation, you have to be able to defend that from outsiders when they come into attack. Outsiders such as Imu, the government, the celestial dragons. And so what I think this event is going to do is it is going to take the previous warfare and culture of Elbaf and marry it with the education and peace-based culture that Harold was trying to build into something that's just better than both of them. It's like if Harold hadn't taken Ida's vision too far, this is probably the direction he would have gone in. And, we're probably going to have a scenario where it's Hiruden, possibly with Loki, and the new giant warrior pirates who are really ushering in this new era. And so, back to the first page here, though, we have the rest of the giant warrior pirates talking to Dorian Broggy. You got to come back to us. This unlimited strength and regeneration is awesome. And they're still, they're Domi Reversi, right? So they're still being influenced by Imu, kind of in the same way that Harold was. And so one of them just goes in for a stab, and he takes out Dory's shield, which also takes out Dory's arm. We see it like hanging limply later in the chapter, right? And this is probably because Dory and Broggy are like on equal footing. They're like narratively equal to each other, right? And so Broggy got his arm shot off by Imu. And so now Dory's taking that same injury. This is kind of going to put them on more of an even keel. And it might even lead to the retiring of these two, maybe they step down from the mantle of the warrior pirates, the giant warrior pirates, and they possibly replace Jarl or become the successor of Jarl in terms of the elder role in Elbaf, which creates even more of an opening for Hyrden and the new giant warrior pirates to come in and really fully come into their own, right, as that next generation. But if anything, if Dory and Bragi do ever have duels in the future, they still exist on even footing, right? They both have lost an arm. Bragi's might still be able to get healed. You know, his arm is still there, even though he can't move it. Dory's is flat out gone. But I think it's safe to assume that Bragi's arm will never be back at its full strength after this, putting those two more on even keel. And these two talk down mad to the Domi Reversi Giants, which is kind of funny because that was them a couple chapters ago. They also got Domi Reversi'd, but the big difference to me is that they got out of it. Not only did they get out of it, right? Like, they fought to the point where they slowly started getting their senses back. And who's to say the other giant warrior pirates would not also have this level of conviction had they been pitted against each other in the way Zoro managed to pit Dory and Bragi against each other. But as soon as those two had enough of their cognizance to realize what was going on, to realize what they said, that they're targeting Elder Jarl, both of them, without missing a beat, knew exactly what they needed to do. And that was in a very cool, awesome panel from last chapter, or maybe 2 chapters ago. Take each other out. Just slice each other's heads off, right? The conviction to do that is a gold standard of giant warrior pride, right? And so I think that it's fair that now they're, you know, kind of antagonizing the rest of the Domi Reversi Giants a little bit, because it's like, hey guys, we were able to do this. Y'all should be able to do this too. And that is also how they discovered one of the means of pushing individuals out of Domi Reversi. Now, at first we thought maybe that was the only way of them doing it, but that is not the case. We learn later in this chapter with Chopper that in some way, we don't really understand what's going on, there are other facets to push a individual out of Domi Reversi. And so now we jump over to Chopper and Scopper Gabon's group. Chopper Gabon, I've heard some people say, if you want to mix those two together. And they also have Kashi. Now, these three were not present when Dory and Bragi took each other out, which means they do not know that inflicting lethal damage is one means of pushing someone out of Domi Reversi. And so Kashi doesn't want to hurt his friends, right? Like, he literally says, you know, you guys are my friends. I can't bring myself to hurt you. They're, of course, antagonizing him like, oh, you don't want to cut us down. What an excuse. You're a wimp. Could you even take us out if you wanted to? That's a question for another day. But the main thing is Kashi does not want to take out his friends because he doesn't know that he won't be killing them. But at the same time, he doesn't want to get stuck between the two because then he might also get flipped and Domi Reversi'd. And so they're kind of at this standstill here. Scopper does go to pick up his axe a little bit later. He doesn't need to do anything. But, while injured, he probably would have jumped in if he needed to. But you have him and Scopper telling Kashi, like, hey man, you've got to fight, and Kashi is understandably resistant to it. So we'll come back to that later, but for now, we jump back over to Dory and Bragi's group that also has Hyrden, Stanson, and Zoro. And Bragi is going in. He's like, hey, Gantonio, look, we've been buddies for a long time, and you never change. And listen up, pal. Whenever you ask me for just one bite of my food, which I'm willing to share with you, dang it, you go and eat half of it. And with the rage of losing his food, he slices D'Antonio clean in half, which is going to free him from Domi Reversi. But it's just kind of funny the justification he used for that. And now we get a series of panels that I shouldn't say never, but you know what? Maybe we've never seen anything like this in One Piece before, where our heroes, our protagonists, are like bisecting people. You know, Hiruden comes in with a Gunganir and literally punches a giant in half. Then we got Dory with an Ikoku sovereignty. Maybe it's Brock. I think it's Dory. I get them mixed up sometimes. Stanson comes in with his hammer, a gigantic drum, and all three of them just bisect their enemies. Now, Zoro, man, Zoro's been waiting for this day for nearly 1,200 chapters. He has been restrained. He has been held back by being a good guy in Oda's story this whole time. And to commemorate the excitement of being able to fully unleash his power onto an enemy, he treats us to a new technique. 3-sword style, Red Ogre, Mega Fury. And he just leaps through this giant, and this is more than a bisecting. The guy's head gets split into nice, manageable pieces. His hands cut right off. He's totally cooked, which of course is going to return him from Domi Reversi. Like, if any of these attacks were fatal, it was Zoro's. And all of this thing here says, that fatal strike was a real beauty. Don't worry, guys, this won't kill you. And I think this group is having fun. And I imagine that, like, when each member lands a killing blow, the rest of the members are like, yeah, look at that. Now that was a beaut. And maybe they might even be trying to one-up each other on who has the most magnificent kill shot. So much that Jarl is sitting there and he's like, is it me? Or do they seem giddy about this? Like, are you guys enjoying this maybe a little bit more than you should be? It's pretty funny. I really like that scene. Now we jump back to Chopper's group. This is where we're going to get into what I mentioned earlier. We got Scopper grabbing his axe, but he doesn't actually have to do anything. At the same time, Chopper eats a Rumble Ball, which allows him to transform into Monster Point, and he, like, smacks this guy in the face. Really, like, slaps him, right? You know, it's not fatal. It's not a terribly damaging attack. He's really just trying to get this giant away from Kashi, and he slaps the Domi Reversi right out of this guy. So he hits him, and then a shadow starts popping out from behind him. Even Chopper's confused, and the giant flips, right? Just like when they were Domi Reversi'd, he flips back to normal. And this is weird, right? So there is something with Chopper that allows him to, like, slap Domi Reversi out of someone, like, psh, psh, psh. Now, we don't get the explanation for this in this chapter. It could have something to do with being a Devil Fruit user. You know, we haven't really gotten to see Devil Fruit users interact with Domi Reversi individuals yet. You know, at God Valley, you know, by the time that they were fighting rocks, Domi Reversi, it was just Roger and Garp, not Devil Fruit users. Here on this island, most of the giants aren't Devil Fruit users. Zoro is not a Devil Fruit user. All the people we've been seeing interact with Domi Reversi giants, or individuals in general, they are not Devil Fruit users. Well, Chopper is, so I see a few paths for this. It could be something unique to Chopper himself, with his Devil Fruit possibly awakening. It could be something with Devil Fruits in general, like the devil and the Devil Fruit ousts the devil, taking over the Domi Reversi individual, and just, you know, kind of like, go home, get out of here, get out of here. You're done. We don't want you here. Or it could be something else entirely. But the main takeaway is that there are now definitively multiple ways of pushing somebody out of Domi Reversi. This really makes me think that Luffy's going to have a method of his own, like Sun God Nika, the warrior of liberation. You know, maybe if it's just a devil fruit thing, then him having a devil fruit user, or him having a devil fruit, being a devil fruit user, would achieve the same thing as Chopper. Or if Chopper's devil fruit or something with Chopper himself is creating a unique scenario that allows him to push individuals out of Domi Reversi, then it's really possible that Luffy has his own version of that that's somehow tied to being Nika, whether that be the drums of liberation, whether him having some way of pushing, you know, the demon out. But what this makes me hope, really, is that if Domi Reversi has more than one weakness, I want to imagine that maybe the Gods Knights and anyone with the contract covenant from Imu also has more than one weakness. And the reason I say this is really because not all characters can have Conqueror's Haki. You just can't go handing out, you get Conqueror's Haki, you get Conqueror's Haki, you get Conqueror's Haki, I get Conqueror's Haki. That's kind of what it feels like. It really is. But at brass tacks, not that many characters have it. And so if the Gods Knight's only weakness is Conqueror's Haki, it kind of like removes potential fights from all of the characters who don't have that, which happens to include a large amount of the Straw Hats, our main characters who we want to see getting these cool fights. Well, if, like Domi Reversi, the contracted individuals such as the Gods Knights or the Gorosei have more than one weakness that either defeats them or prevents their regeneration or slows down their regeneration, I don't think it would be so easy to break the contract in the way that Domi Reversi can be broken. I think the contracts are a much deeper level than Domi Reversi. Like, Domi Reversi is very surface level. But if there are other ways of actually defeating these Gods Knights, so we'll see later with Killingham that there are temporary ways of defeating them. Very funny. But if there's more than one method of tackling the Gods Knights, that will open up the potential fights that we can get in the story in the future. So moving along, they are all confused. Like, how did you turn back to normal? Like, what did Chopper do? None of them know. And then poor Killingham got done so dirty. Killingham got off-screened. In the next panel, we have outside the Owl Library, we see Nami feeding Zeus a large string of the Black Thunderballs. I think she's really like trying to charge him up, give him more energy so that he can help put out the fires at a wider scale than even our greatest firefighter, Jinbei, who also happens to be one of my favorite Straw Hats. But the other thing this might set up is Zeus can become a thundercloud. Who can really make good use of lightning? It's Luffy. It's Sun God Nika. And possibly even Loki as well, because as Nidhogg, he has lightning powers. So I wonder if at some point in the fight with Imu, Nami's going to get Zeus to unleash a really strong thunder attack, lightning attack rather, that either will strike Imu directly or that will be used and or augmented by Luffy and Loki into an even stronger attack. But moving on to Killingham, I love this panel. I have an incredible degree of satisfaction behind the fact that Jinbei, the Fishman, who Killingham was talking so much smack to in the last chapter, is the one holding his head. Like, so casually holding a beheaded Killingham. It's great. It fills my soul with pleasure. It makes me a little nervous for the overall strength of the Gods Knights. I mean, they, at the end of the day, Imu is one of the final villains in this story. Whether you think that Imu is the final villain or that Blackbeard is the final villain, Imu and his crew, his posse, they can't be total bums. Now, we've only seen 3 Gods Knights here. Maybe this is the weakling trio of God's Knights, or Summers and Killingham are the weakest ones, and then Gunko is there because she's a special vessel for Imu. So there's still a shot that the rest of the God's Knights are really strong. Like, I can't see Shamrock getting this treatment. I can't see Figurlin Shamrock getting done this dirty. But this is a temporary solution. Like, they literally split apart Killingham's body, and now they're keeping it separated to prevent him from really putting himself back together. Now, I don't know exactly how the regeneration works. Like, can he regrow his entire body? Maybe only if it's destroyed, like actually pulverized. If you lose the mark, are you totally cooked? Like, here, Killingham hasn't lost the mark. He's just split up. It's like how they dealt with Buggy in the beginning of the story in his arc. But one thing I find funny is, so Sanji is like sitting on Killingham's torso, and the bubble is where his head should be. Now, there's no way Sanji did not smash the crap out of that bubble in the last chapter. So, does it regrow with the rest of Killingham? Not sure. But yeah, we have Frankie tying up his legs, Jinbei holding his head very comically, and Sanji sitting on his torso. And Frankie makes a interesting comment, or rather Sanji. Okay, so Jinbei is like, you have a lot of bark for someone in your position, because Killingham's running his mouth. That's about all he can do now. Frankie's like, if we box him up, he shouldn't be able to reattach everything, right? So that's the way of dealing with him. And Sanji brings up kind of the same thing I mentioned earlier. It's hard to believe these are the kinds of knights they have protecting the Holy Land. And Sanji, I kind of get it. I really like to imagine that the rest of the God's Knights are not this much of bums. Now, Frankie, who just got a massive Vega Cola power-up, rebuttals by saying, you know, Sanji, we're just too good for him now, right? Like, we're a Yonko crew. You know, we're just too strong. None of the Straw Hats have hockey, so it's a little interesting to see just how far they've come without that. I would still enjoy if, you know, they had basic hockey, but it is to say, like, we can't have our main characters being too strong going into the final saga, because that really lowers the stakes. So this downplaying is either indicating that Imu and the God's Knights are just not the final enemies, or at the very least, they're not the final enemies for the Straw Hats, i.e., then that would be the Blackbeard Pirates, or it is indicating that the rest of the God's Knights are stronger, or that these are just like phase one of these God's Knights. Like, maybe Imu can bestow greater amounts of power to his forces when necessary. It's just not something he wants to be giving them all the time. So maybe he could give Killingham a buff, and he could give Summers a buff, and while in Elbaf, make them stronger. And so perhaps in a true endgame life or death fight, where Imu's like, we're gonna lose, he has a method of both fighting himself, and I really want to see if Imu can throw hands. We're gonna get into that towards the end of the chapter. But also a way of buffing the God's Knights so that they're all individually stronger than they are right now. Luffy and Loki appear. Luffy's like jumping and excited, you know, seeing his crewmates. They all comment on the sheer size and scale of Loki. Jinbei compares him to like a huge sea king. Sanji's like, what? Is that Loki? Frankie has like the star eyes. He's like, that's cool, even though he doesn't, but he's saying it's really cool. Now, Nami, like, all the boys are having a good time. They're partying. Loki's cool. He's a giant, like, literal giant dragon. Nami jumps in and scolds the crap out of Luffy and Loki. She's like, it's great that you took out the monsters attacking Elbaf, but damn it, Loki, you're so big, you're so devastating that you're creating more fires. I can't put them all out at this rate. Even if I bring in Fireman Jinbei, we can't put them all out at this rate. Reel it back a little bit, you know, knock it off. And then This is an absolute gold panel. I love it so much. Oda draws Luffy like looking more childish, like kind of like nervous, like he just got scolded by his mom. And then Ragnar, who also just got scolded, is like consoling him, like patting him on the shoulder, like, it's okay, buddy. And then Luffy's like, you just got me in trouble, Loki. What are we doing here? And Loki, understandably so, doesn't really care. He just he shoots Luffy with lightning, which doesn't do anything. And he's like, I'm here for one thing. I'm here to crush the threats of Elbaf. Why do I care about your crewmates, bitch? And I don't know if this is setting up a potential conflict between Luffy and Loki, like, i.e. if Loki gets Domi Reversi'd. I'm fairly confident that Luffy cannot be Domi Reversi'd. Setting aside him having plot armor and being the main character, I get the sense that Nika, as an entity, even if, like, Devil Fruit users might also be resilient or resistant to Domi Reversi. But if Loki gets Domi Reversi, then we'll learn that Devil Fruit users are not resistant to that, and that there are other conditions instead that make it possible. But I do not think Luffy can be affected. So this could be setting up a future fight between Luffy and Loki, where Loki now realizes that his lightning doesn't do anything to Luffy, or if they're going to have like a spar at the end, or if this is just a funny little scene to play along with Nami's scolding. Luffy says, though, if that did work, I'd have sent your ass flying. You'd have had bigger problems than Elbaf being attacked. And then we move along to an absolutely epic scene with Usopp. And I have to say, in my time reading Elbaf, this is kind of exactly what I wanted to see from Usopp, right? Do I want to see more from Usopp in Elbaf? Yes. Yes, I do. Would I be okay if this is the only moment he ends up getting, though? With how packed these arcs have been with all the characters, I'd be okay with that too. Like, even if each Straw Hat kind of gets one big moment, this could count as Usopp's. And really, what it is a genuine, bona fide representation of warrior's pride. Not coming from a giant, but coming from Usopp. How does this take form, you might ask? Well, Usopp, somehow, we don't see how he gets here. He was with Sanji's group last chapter, and now he's with Brook in this chapter. But he is taking on a god. He is but a small man with a slingshot, and he's taking on a god named Imu alongside Brook. So Brook is telling Usopp to flee. He's like, you must flee, Usopp. I came here for my own reasons, but this individual is tremendously dangerous. And Usopp, what does Usopp do, guys? He stands on business. He understands the assignment in this case. He knows what we're looking for. He knows what the Giants are looking for. But most importantly, I think he knows what will make him feel the best, right? So he really stands on business. And I'm going to read this off because I don't think I could do it justice any other way. But Usopp says, just pretend I'm narrator Sama now. Who would run and abandon a crewmate at a time like this? Brook. True warriors do not run. I have always dreamed of visiting this place, to come to the land I've admired. I won't disgrace myself, not here. Besides, I'm burning with fury right now. Brook, these guys, they are looking down on Elbaf. Their gutless plan was to sneak here and kidnap children. They did not use their own strength at all in this evasion. They relied on those monsters. They hijacked the minds of all the proud warriors in an attempt to force them to slaughter each other. How dare you carry out such a cowardly and underhanded scheme, you shameless beast? It is fantastic. Like, this is great development from Usopp. I really hope he keeps it going forward. Like, I get that, Usopp is supposed to represent normal people such as myself in the story. But like, I really do like to see, main characters grow. One of my gripes with Usopp is he's kind of like wishy-washy, like there'll be a point where I really think he's locking in, and then in the next chapter he's running with his head cut off like a chicken, But this was great. This was absolutely great. While Brook and Usopp aren't really at the level of power to fight Imu, that's not the point of what's being conveyed here. Now, Brook jumps in to try to help Usopp, and we see Imu freeze him in place. He raises Gunko's hand and freezes Brook in place. It's very reminiscent of how Saturn could look at people in Egghead and stop them from moving. At first, I thought that might have been Saturn's power, but maybe it's Emu's power, and Saturn was just able to use it via the Covenant mark. Let's continue. Usopp goes on, if you want to conquer them, do it fair and square. Fight them head on, you spineless coward. And he shoots off a skull bomb grass. Now, Imu comes back with a very typical kingly man antagonist evil response. A dominant ruler never sullies their own hands. Which is really true here, because Imu is not sullying his own hands. He is using Gunko to do the dirty work, while he also gets to be in control. So he's really living up to his words. And he either hits Usopp with fire of his own, or he reverses the skull bomb grass back onto Usopp, and he really takes out both him and Brook. We see them on the ground, pretty messed up. Gunko, Gunkmu, whatever you want to call him, does take some damage, some backlash. You can see parts of her head lopped off, cut out. But, you hear crack, crack, crackle, and she starts to recover. Now we get the last page of the chapter. And I'm pretty excited about this because Luffy is angry while in Gear 5th. So I like Gear 5th a lot. It's goofy, it's funny, it lets Oda have near unlimited creative license to draw Luffy doing whatever he wants. But one thing I feel was somewhat lost by Gear 5th is just like the gritty, serious nature that I loved seeing from Luffy in pre-time skip, and even really not just pre-time skip, but pre-Gear 5th, when the situation calls for it, right? Like when he needs to fight an enemy, when it's time for business, when his friends are getting hurt, Luffy locks in. That was kind of lost by Gear 5th. Now we'll see how this carries over into the next chapter to see if it sticks, if it goes into his fighting style, or if he just goes right back to Cartoon Man. But at least here, this panel of him standing over Usopp and Brook, mentioning to Loki, I am now really pissed. And Loki's like, that's good. This lady is the source of the hockey we felt down in the realm of the dead. And I was not planning on letting these guys off the hook anyway. So now we have a confrontation of literal gods. Imu, Nika, and Nidhogg. And in fact, Imu addresses the two as such, stating, Nika, Nidhogg, submit or perish. This battle shall divide the world. So this is it. I really hope Loki doesn't get Domi Reversi'd, at least not right away, actually at all. But if it's gonna happen, I'd like it to not be right away. Maybe an escape tactic for Imu, if necessary. I want to see Imu throw hands, even if it's using Gunko's body, right, in the Arrow no Mi. I want to determine that Imu themselves is capable of pitched combat, be that using weapons or hand-to-hand or whatever he chooses to use to combat Luffy and Loki. This is a fight I really want to see play out. I hope it doesn't get cut short in some way. Or maybe I shouldn't say that. I hope we get to see a great demonstration of power from both sides. And then if it for some reason does need to get cut short, that proves as a method of either Imu escaping looking good, because Imu probably can't be defeated here. I just don't think it makes sense. We are in the last arc of the story, but we're not at the very last fight. We're not in the Holy Land of Marijois. We're not facing Imu directly, right? So I think it is too early for Imu to straight out lose. So maybe we get a really strong showing from both sides, even if you want to give Imu a little bit of the upper hand. And then something happens. Maybe the Holy Land is still on fire. Maybe Imu has to retreat and has to bring the God Knights back, as in, we cannot mess around here anymore. And then, as a method of escape, maybe Loki gets Domi Reversi. And then we can see a conflict between Luffy and Loki, but it won't last for the rest of the story, right? Because the Straw Hats and Luffy and the Giants of Elbaf, that actually would be kind of poetic a little bit, right? Like, the Giants of Elbaf go from absolutely detesting Loki all the way to the other side of the spectrum, where they are the ones putting their lives on the line to save Loki. And that would show a really, really solid shift in opinion of Loki and the sacrifice he's made for Elbaf coming through in this arc. And that could show up in the form of, if Imu and the God's Knights need to escape, Domi Reversi Loki, get out of Dodge. Imu still looks good and is in tip shape as the last boss, or one of the last bosses of the story. And then we can get this epic fight with Luffy, the Straw Hats, and most importantly, the Warriors of Elbaf, risking it all to save Loki. I personally, that is the one scenario where I would be okay with Loki being Domi Reversi'd, if part of it was to show the huge swing in opinion from Elbaf on Loki himself, from the beginning of the arc to the end of the arc. And here we go. It does not look like there's a break next week, so I will certainly try to make a return. I unfortunately don't have a job right now, because mine got cut to budget. I basically got laid off. So I do have more time to invest in things like videos, but I'm also trying to figure out what's going to come next. So we'll see. Hopefully I can make it back for more. I also hope you enjoyed this, and I would like each and every one of you to have an excellent rest of your day.